PandC Federation as an organisation have their own officers. Other than the State Council and arising from annual conference, the officers are elected. The roles that we elect at annual conference are President, Senior Vice President, 2 Metropolitan Vice Presidents, 2 Country Vice Presidents, a Treasurer and a Publicity Officer. These officers aren't elected all at one time, however they are elected each half, and this is called a half Senate election. So at any point in time you've got consistency within the officers of the organisation of PandC Federation. The responsibility of the officers are very similar to the responsibilities of the officers of PandC associations in each school. The officers of the PandC association, no matter what school you're in, are literally the task producers of each PandC. As an officer, sometimes people think that they get to lead the PandC, and you do to a certain degree, but you don't get to tell a PandC what to do. The roles of the PandC as a democratic organisation mean that they get to tell us as officers what to do. So if I'm the president at my PandC association, I don't get to make autocratic or autonomous decisions. That means I mustn't make a decision on behalf of the PandC association. As an officer or the president, you must make a decision based on what the PandC proper has told you. That is, where a motion's been tabled and carried at a PandC meeting, you then undertake and take on that activity. If you have a question as an officer or an issue is raised as an officer that hasn't been addressed by the PandC, you may wish to call an extraordinary meeting or a special meeting, as it's sometimes known, of the PandC, and make sure that the proper day's notice is given, that all members are notified. Failing that, you would hold off on making a decision, place the item on the agenda for the next meeting, advertise it to the wider school community, and have the discussion as suitable at the very next general meeting of the PandC. It's important to remember, as an officer of the PandC association in your school, that you represent the whole school community, that you advocate for each and every child, and that public education is only as good as the people who represent and champion for it. So make sure when you're undertaking your tasks, you're always doing it with the objectives of the PandC Association's constitution and the objectives of the membership in your heart and your head. The role of the President is a significant one for PandC associations. The President is a representative and a public representative of the PandC Association. Typically, they are the one to make public statement on behalf of the organisation. As well, they might represent PandC Association at assemblies, distinguished events, and certainly by invitation of the principal. Where the President is unable to fill their role, the Vice President can support the President while they're off. Where the President might choose to delegate their role to the Vice President, this is suitable and a really good way to make sure that succession planning occurs. If you've got any inquiries about the role of the President, you should look at the fact sheet on the website or give us a call at the office. The role of a Secretary in a PandC is a very important role. The Secretary tables the correspondence and makes sure that correspondence is responded to as appropriate and as resolved by the PandC Association. The Secretary also keeps the register of the members, that is, those people who are eligible to vote. Whenever there's a contest or a call for a vote, the Secretary's register would be referred to. The Secretary takes the minutes of the meeting and then publishes the minutes of the meeting. And by publish, we don't suggest here at PandC Federation that you should put them in the newsletter. The best thing to do if you want to get your PandC voice across is have the Secretary write a synopsis or make their own newsletter. The minutes are certainly for circulation at the meeting, but they don't make for good bedtime reading as a parent in the school community. Also, and as well as the minutes, the Secretary should produce an action sheet. This is a guide that will tell the PandC members who's got the responsibility for what. So for example, where someone's put their hand up to be in charge of the disco purchasing, the action sheet would reflect that this is the person charged with the task and will help everyone keep the focus of the PandC objectives. The Secretary's role can sometimes be the most important role, for without the minutes and without reminding of the resolutions, sometimes work doesn't get done. So, for all of our PandC Association secretaries, we'd encourage you to make sure that your minute taking is accurate, and if you need support on agenda construction or the format of the minutes, give us a call at the office or have a look at some of the documents on the website. Better yet, have a look at your regional councils or contact a state council member to see what support's available from your volunteers. The Treasurer of the PandC Association has the responsibility for reporting the financial status of that PandC Association to its members. It's not restricted to members, the information is available to volunteers and the wider school community. If you're an incorporated association, that information is also made available to PandC Federation once a year on your audited report. As the Treasurer, you'll make sure that where the money's spent, that there's a resolution that supports that. So for example, where a PandC association might resolve to spend $1,000 on a particular item, it's your job to make sure, or your role to make sure, that this expenditure occurs and doesn't occur any more than what the PandC membership has resolved. As the Treasurer, you'll be a signatory on all of the accounts of the PandC, including subcommittee accounts. You'll be joined as a signatory by 2 of your other office bearers. The office bearers of the organisation are no one other than the President, the Secretary, the Vice Presidents, or yourself. Subcommittee members, while they may have roles and responsibilities as scribe or convener, are not office bearers of the PandC Association proper. And further to the role of Treasurer, you'll be mindful to table a report of the financial status to each and every meeting of the PandC. You will also table the bank statement for notification, which just makes signature, of the Secretary and the President. You should be able to ask questions of the PandC membership. And the fun bit of your job is you should be able to steer the budget for the next year and talk about the fundraising objectives and the spending objectives of your PandC association. The role of Treasurer is a good one because you get to keep your eye on the prize at what resources you could put to your school community to make sure that the educational outcomes of our children in public education are being well met. Vice Chair people are very important roles in the PandC. As Vice President, you'll be able to support the President in their undertaking. You'll often be delegated tasks by the President, and you'll also have a chance to liaise between the subcommittees and the other officers as suitable. As Vice President, you can do any task delegated or authorised to you by the President. Where you are representing the school community, no matter what your officer position, we do encourage you to write a written report. We do encourage you to table a written report to each and every PandC meeting. PandC associations can have an executive committee, and indeed at each annual general meeting, or an AGM, you should elect up to 6 executive members. These are members that sit aside from the office bearers. So you'll have your office bearers of the President, the Secretary, the Vice Presidents and the Treasurer, as well as up to 6 executive members who can come together as suitably called with proper notice to make decisions for the PandC association. Executive committees shouldn't be used to make decisions each and every month on behalf of the PandC association, and their role is not to shortcut or undermine the decisions of a previous PandC membership meeting. What the executive is best suited to do is to deal with matters ad hoc, that is things that come up spontaneously that you don't know about prior and that need to be dealt with efficiently, or as an employer, sometimes the PandC executive is best situated to deal with matters that are sensitive and need to be restricted in their discussion points and not open for the broader membership. Where a PandC executive meets, you must keep minutes, and you must table those minutes to the general meeting of the PandC for all of the PandC members to note the discussion points. You should have an agenda for each meeting, and you should stick strictly to the agenda for that meeting. Where you're dealing regularly with an executive committee, you might want to question whether you're meeting too regularly and whether the discussions aren't better situated for an alternative subcommittee that needs to be established, or better yet, whether it goes back to the PandC proper to be discussed there. A PandC executive is constructed to support the work of the PandC general meeting, and it's mindful that the 6 members, or up to 6 members, and the PandC association officers act strictly and in line with the PandC association's intentions. It's quite common for PandC associations to have subcommittees. There's 2 types of subcommittees, ad hoc and standing. An ad hoc subcommittee is a subcommittee that's put together for a particular term, and this term will have a time when it rests. So for example, the best way to describe an ad hoc subcommittee is, say, a FATE that you're proposing to have in 18 months' time. The PandC would set up a structure, being the subcommittee, for the FATE. These people can then meet as resolved by the PandC association without all of the members coming to the general meeting of the PandC again. A standing committee of the PandC is a perpetual committee. This is a committee that might meet every year annually, and their task doesn't necessarily have an end date. Some of the easiest examples of these type of committees are a canteen committee or a uniform committee. These committees take on the roles of making sure the work of the PandC gets undertaken. So a subcommittee will have a convener or a chairperson, we'll also have a minute taker or a note taker, and it could even have an assistant to the treasurer. And these are all roles that support the workings of the subcommittee to meet the objectives of the PandC Association proper. Where a subcommittee meets, it should be minuted, and these minutes should be tabled to the next meeting of the PandC Association. It's not inappropriate and would actually help the PandC Association if a written report was tabled as well as the minutes. This lets the recommendations of the subcommittee be discussed by the PandC Association and then voted upon as suitable. So for example, if I wanted to change one of the uniform items in that subcommittee and I was a subcommittee member, I might discuss it at the subcommittee for the uniforms, and we might all agree to take that recommendation to the PandC Association. The PandC Association would have it notified on their agenda, and the whole school community can start having that discussion if we need to have it. When it gets to the PandC Association, we look at the principal as an ex officio member to steer us on some of the Department of Education and Community guidelines, and there's lots around uniforms. From that point in time, the PandC might decide that the matter should be discussed formally, which is appropriate. A motion might be put, and we have a vote. Once the vote's decided, i.e. it's either lost or carried, then an outcome would happen. If it's lost, it doesn't get discussed again, and that's that for now. But if it's carried, then we might take some action other than what's already been resolved. For example, we might survey the community, or we might test the community to see how happy everyone is or isn't with that item. So this is the type of function that a subcommittee can perform. Some of the benefits of having a subcommittee to the PandC Association is that you don't wear out the members of the committee talking about the very detailed issues regarding one specific topic, such as the uniform shop, the canteen, or the fete, and that you get to make very clear recommendations back to the PandC membership proper, which can then be dealt with during the time of the meeting without making the meeting a very long and lengthy ordeal. So a subcommittee, where it works well, is a good structure of the PandC Association. We do remind you though that no member of a subcommittee, as in their roles or as their capacities set out, can actually be a signatory on the PandC accounts. The only people and the only members who can be signatories on PandC Association accounts, including subcommittees, are the President, the Secretary, the Treasurer or the Vice Presidents. It's very important that we make sure that we keep our legislative requirements in place while we're undertaking our PandC guideline requirements.